It is time now for our featured review. And for this week, we are reviewing the newest film on Netflix, the newest hit on Netflix that is made by one of our favorite directors, Mr. Richard Linklater. This is Hitman. I'm going to go first on this one. Talk all about Hitman, what it's about, what I thought. Hitman stars everybody's favorite new movie star, Glen Powell, who just seems to be everywhere right now. And this movie originally debuted at Toronto last year, I think. Like it's been around for a little while. People have seen it, but it got this early summer Netflix release. And Glen Powell plays a psychology professor at a college, based loosely based on true story, who moonlights as tech help for the police department until one day he has to be called up and work as an undercover hitman to try and entrap people who are trying to contract his services. And he goes through a bunch of different clients and getting them put away. He really starts to get into it. He really starts to feel like he's found his purpose. He ends up meeting a girl in the process that was trying to kill her husband, named Madison, played by Adira Arjona, who I don't think I've seen in anything, but I wonder why, because she's pretty great in this too. And he kind of falls for her and lets her off at the same time, and they start up a thing. This movie, this is what Glen Powell could be, right? Everyone's trying to figure out what's Glen Powell and how do we best use him. This is how you best use Glen Powell. Like he's believable as a psychology professor. He's a chameleon. He's one of those guys that in 10 years everyone's gonna realize, oh, he was just a good-looking character actor. I like that they did this with Channing Tatum. They've done this with who's another one? Daniel Craig. Is kind of like
JCR.
JCR. Well, yeah, JCR. Definitely, that's what you think. A hot character actor. That's what I think when I think of John C.
Spanish
Reilly.
pantalones.
Yeah. I mean Ryan Gosling to a certain extent, right? I mean, I think that's kind of what Glen Powell is, and he can use some of that character actor stuff as he's going through his different hitman personas. This movie is funny. It is sexy. It is just a lot of fun. I'm watching this movie and it's got a half hour left. I'm like, I don't know how they're going to wrap this up. I don't know where this is going. And especially as another character, Jasper, played by Austin Amelio. Yeah. I think he was in Everybody Wants Some, I believe, right, Todd?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a Rick returner here. I think he is one of several that are potential candidates for biggest douchebag at the end of the year. But I can't help it. This is a 3.5-star movie. This thing is just so much fun. I wish I could have seen this in the theater because this would have played to a crowd really, really well, I feel. And a crowd would have had a lot of fun with it. But instead, we're at home with Netflix, so that's how we watched it. Even with that, I had a ton of fun. 3.5 stars for me on Hitman. We're gonna go to Zach next. Zach, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this movie was a top 4 most anticipated movie of the summer from Todd, but I think we all sort of knew that this was going to be a big release. I mean, we love Rick movies. We even loved Apollo 10.5, and we love everything he does, except the Bernadette. Now, I never saw Bernadette, but I just, it's probably not worth remembering. Anyway, this movie is unique. I mean, you don't exactly know where it's going. It feels a little bit, for the first 30 minutes, like an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It kind of feels like a TV show. It's very bright. It's on Netflix. It kind of has some sitcom-esque humor to it. And you're thinking this is a movie about a hitman. But I'm giving the movie thumbs up, a somewhat reluctant thumbs up for a few reasons. Number one, it is a really entertaining movie. I didn't even have to pause it. And this is a Netflix movie, remember, so it's begging you to pause it and take bathroom breaks. But I did not during this movie. I do have to confess, I didn't always know where this movie was going. It's in part because it had a few too many coincidences, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I think my favorite thing about the movie, I'll say two favorite things about it. One favorite thing about the movie was there is a scene that involves the note apps on the cell phone. That is a really good scene. Okay, that's an excellent scene. I mean, that's a very funny, that's a creative use of that device. And it's a scene where the characters actually have to think about what they're doing, and you can see them thinking and you can see them reacting quickly. And that's a fascinating scene. And it is certainly funny watching Chris Evans, no, Chris, Glen Powell, excuse me, put don different disguise. I feel, wasn't this like a Chris Pratt movie like 10 years ago? I feel it's fun watching him put on different disguises and do the performance thing. I said I had two favorite things about it. My other favorite thing about it was that it does not end in a shootout. I thought this movie 100% was going the way of a shootout, big, huge explosion climax. The director of The Fall Guy would have ended this movie in a ridiculous shootout, and I'm really glad this movie didn't. The fact that this movie was made by Rick is like the best and worst thing about it, because I think Rick is obviously a great director. He avoids some of the pitfalls of the genre. On the other hand, it's not Boyhood, it's not the Before movies, it's not Dazed and Confused, so it's kind of hard to compare that. And I'm going to tell you why it's not those things. I think there's too many coincidences in the movie. There's too many times when things just don't really get accounted for, and okay, we're just going to kind of move on. I got a little bit tired at about the 60-minute mark of seeing Glen Powell and Adria Arjona go on, an ice cream date, and then go dancing, and then go to the movie, and then go this. It's like, okay, we get it. Okay, they have chemistry. Now, I think the critics are saying they have chemistry fundamentally because these are two extremely good-looking people, and that gets to my real fundamental flaw with this movie. Is as nice as these actors are to look at, where's Jack Black as Gary? Okay, where is our boy Paul Giamatti as Gary? Where is JCR as Gary? This movie is too glammed up. Okay, the real Gary, we saw pictures of him, not exactly Glen Powell. None of us are Glen Powell. Okay, I think
he was a Marine, right? Like, I don't. That's there's one picture of him that he was under a whole bunch of stuff and looked like he was fat, but that was the guy was a Marine or whatever they said.
Reading about this movie, you know that there are two central forces to it. One is Richard Linklater and one is Glen Powell. Richard Linklater bought the rights to this story by the same guy who wrote Bernie in the Texas Monthly article. And
that's how you know it's a Rick movie, too, is that he got it off a Texas Monthly article.
Skip Hollandsworth. So Rick was sitting on it for a long time, didn't really know what to do with it. Then apparently Glen Powell went up to him and said, hey, we should do this, and we should stray from the reality of the story. It is very obvious that this movie is heavily, heavily fictionalized. And, again, I can't help but wonder, was that Rick or was that Glenn? It's not boring. It is fun. They do have good chemistry, even though it is just because they're good looking. It is fun seeing the situations that they get into it. I think there's a tendency to overpraise this movie because movies like this tended to be a little bit more common 20 years ago when you got intelligent, fun, summer, vaguely noir, vaguely comedy movies. So we need more of them, which is why I'm giving the movie thumbs up. It is not great, Rick, and I kind of wish that we had seen the original Rick interpretation of this story. Again, I'm spoiled by Bernie. I'm sure we'll talk about Bernie a little bit later, but to me, this movie was a little bit more skin deep, a little bit more cutesy than I think a lot of the best Rick movies. But it is entertaining, and it is fun to watch, and it didn't end in a shootout, and I really appreciate that, and it's a 3-star movie for me.
All right, Todd. On to you. Is the chemistry just because they're really, really ridiculously good looking?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I give this movie a thumbs up too, but it's not. I mean, I kind of disagree with both of you. It's kind of weird. I think Rick is a genius for making this movie the way he did. Like, it's difficult material to make believable, and he kind of does that. I mean, it's obviously the closest thing to Bernie that he's done. He got this ordinary guy in extraordinary circumstances. Glen Powell is the weird part. You never for a second believe that he is a loser type. And then all of a sudden, he's a ladies' man, like a method actor, college professor. What? Like, how? Like, he's not like Walter White where he gets his new persona because he's like backed into a corner and forced to react. Like, he just does it as if it's like second nature. It'd be like if Andy Stitzer in 40-Year-Old Virgin was all of a sudden like the coolest guy alive for some reason. Like, it never rings true to me that Glen Powell was that guy to start. But fortunately, we don't linger on that very long because
Are you
Rick's too
forgetting
smart for
about
that.
the Elizabeth Banks scene in Barnes and Noble and 40-Year-Old Virgin, Todd?
Yes, well, David Caruso and Jade. Yes, of course. But I mean, I just feel like Powell, even though it's his baby, he's kind of miscast in this. Like, this has Sam Rockwell written all over it. It would have been a classic Sam Rockwell role. But Gary is an interesting character on the page. Like, his inner monologue thing is like the informant. Like, he's kind of a weirdo, and his many personas are pretty great. I wish we had extended sequences of them. Like, maybe there's deleted scenes, but this is a Netflix movie, so we wouldn't even get those even if there were some. But I think this is a classic Netflix movie. This is made to be played on Netflix. The quirky dark comedy never plays well in the theater. Like, I guarantee this would be a dead movie at the box office if we were watching on a big screen. But on Netflix is now number one. This is how it's going to blow up, and more people will watch it for sure on Netflix than they ever would at a theater. The actress Arjona, she's basically like an Ana de Armas clone, and I'm kind of okay with that. She's really interesting to watch. I don't remember. I've seen her before. I don't know what it was in though. And
It's like Ana de Armas mixed with the best friend from New Girl.
okay, I can see that.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, Jim.
We're not wearing
Amelio,
biomed
the other guy, like, he has an asshole sliminess, but he's also like a deeper character than you would expect. I really like that character. He's one of my favorite supporting characters of the year.
He's like the American version of the Scott's Turf Builder guy.
I don't know what that is.
The commercial, the grass commercial, the guy from Game of Thrones with the. Never mind.
That doesn't help. But either way, I mean, I think the movie's a blast to watch. It's the most like laid back movie I've seen in quite a while, and I will say though, I think it's a bit of a flaw in the movie. The fact that they like the undercover guy is like a very public job. Like, I mean, anybody that ever went to this like local college could recognize this guy, and his cover would be completely blown. I don't know how the actual story went, but maybe he was in a different town, but they don't make that a thing. Like, they don't really establish like time and place very well in this, so I don't really know. It just is like a little strange. Like, anybody could run into him. Anybody that he goes to could have been a former student or worked at the college or anything. It's just kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, I give it 3 stars. I think it's like zero ambition, zero stakes, but like 100% escapism. And I'm totally fine with that. It's like a totally solid Rick entry, just not near what he can do.
All right. Well, we are thrice approved. That's good. I saw someone post on Twitter that their favorite hitman of Glen Powell's was definitely the Tilda Swinton hitman. That was kind of near the end.
Tilda Swinton.
I thought that was more like
the red hair down to here.
That seemed more like an Eddie Redmayne Danish Girl hitman. That was my vibe from that, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I love the Sam Rockwell. That's a great point that Todd made. That's a winner right there. I also thought about
he
Nicolas
couldn't do
Cage.
this. He was too busy making Argyle. So,
well, whatever. But I thought about Nicolas Cage because and Todd is also. By the way, Todd, where do we disagree? I mean, your review was dead on. I think we agreed about most things. And I don't always say that, so take that to heart. But one of the problems I had too was it seems very inconceivable that this guy would be so smooth between the Gary persona and the Ron persona. And we have movies about characters that go through identity crises before. The best one, of course, is Matchstick Men. I mean, you have a guy who's OCD, he's also a criminal, and he's also a struggling dad. And Nicolas Cage is able to move between those personas so gracefully, but it's also believable that there are times that he slips. And there's no time in this Glen Powell performance that he ever slips or anything like that. It is weird that he's that public. It's also weird that people keep hiring hitmen. Now, I don't want to out anyone on this podcast. I don't think we've ever hired a hitman before. And if I did, I don't know where I would get the number to get. Now, I know they've had that publicity campaign in LA. He's been on buses, call this hitman. That's just begging people to go to jail, though, because, of course, he's working as an informant. The first 30 minutes of this movie are probably the best part of the movie because it is so unique. I mean, we've never really had a movie before about this undercover hitman. It's kind of interesting, exciting to see where the movie goes. It's almost becomes like a Bruce Wayne Batman type situation. I mean, he's almost like working as an adjunct for the police. And then he also ultimately has to kind of find himself, which is kind of interesting. The movie's supposed to be philosophical, but I don't think it really is. I think it tried to spell out the themes very obviously on the nose in his college lectures, which, by the way, Rick has already done that before. Let's get past the college lectures, okay? We saw that at the end of Everybody Wants Some. And Glen Powell is dorky because he wears glasses and talks like Urkel. Can't he do something a little bit more interesting? That's all I'm saying. Sam Rockwell would have taken that role. He would have made it brilliant, or Nick, or Paul Giamatti, or certainly Jack Black. So the movie's going to get praised for Glen Powell, but actually it's not really his finest work. I think we'd have to admit. I think he's better, and Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah, he's definitely getting a Golden Globe nomination for this, but I don't think it's really going to be necessarily deserved. But yeah, you're right, because the one lecture, yeah, he takes off his glasses and he flips his hair a different way, and then the girls are like, "Since when is our professor hot?" It's like he didn't do anything. He looks the exact same way he did before.
So Zach wanted to see the combination of this and Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage.
That's not bad. That's not bad. I like the professor. We needed the strange sex scene with the taking off the jacket. But see, that would have never happened in this movie. He was too smooth, too suave, as they say. You know what I wrote down? I had a note. I thought this movie, if we're comparing this to, like, I thought this might have been like a Jonathan Demme movie, first 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is like some weird Jonathan Demme vibes. Because like it's funny, it's light, but there's also some dark underside to it. The best parts of this movie, and just listen to me, this is a point that I thought long and hard about, almost as much as my power ranking. This movie wants to be something wild. It ends up being the truth about Charlie. I mean, thank you. You're welcome. That's what this movie is, and that's its fate. And it's also possible that I have too much residual PTSD from Anyone But You. But I think the Glen Powell rom-com, let's maybe move on. Let's do something else in life. Will Gluck could have directed.
You're obviously looking forward to his next.
I'm ready for the next iteration of Glen Powell as he goes to Oklahoma. Goes from New Orleans to Oklahoma. I'm ready for it.
All right. The other thing I think is interesting to talk about with this too is this is like, in the last 6 months, the second Netflix hitman movie by an acclaimed director. And they took it two completely different ways, right? You had David Fincher's The Killer come out at the end of last year. Now you've got Richard Linklater's Hitman. And I remember these getting paired up with each other because they're both Netflix, they're both Hitman movies, but they couldn't be any further apart while still kind of being about the exact same thing. And I kind of
they want to get inside the head, so they do monologue or inner monologue and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they're like perfect companion pieces too. Like that would be an awesome double feature, The Killer and Hitman.
What are you talking about, Terry? They're the same movie, but Tilda Swinton is the most interesting character in both movies. You even said so.
Did we ever do a favorite Hitman like ranking at some point? I feel like we may have.
I don't know. I
think Zach's your favorite's El Duce from Kurt and Courtney, right?
Oh, clearly, yeah, he has to be. I just wanted to. Can we get
find that guy?
Can we get like, I don't know. I mean, I know he died, but like Peter Stormare as Gary, or could we get like a Jerry Stiller as Gary? Just anyone, but instead not a romantic lead. How about Peter Dinklage? I mean, come on. Now that would automatically elevate this movie to 3.5
as
stars.
Hannibal and a hitman.